Hi everyone, let's study psychology with me. Today we will talk about social and personality development in the preschool years. Let's get started. Forming a sense of self. Psychosocial development. According to Erikson, development that encompasses changes both in the understanding individuals have of themselves as members of society and in their comprehension of the meaning of others' behavior. According to Erikson, society and culture present the developing person with particular challenges which shift as people age. He believed that people pass through 8 distinct stages, each characterized by a crisis or conflict that the person must resolve. In the early part of the preschool period, children are ending the autonomy versus shame and doubt stage, which lasts from around 18 months to 3 years. In this autonomy versus shame and doubt stage, what happens is that children either become more independent and autonomous if their parents encourage exploration and freedom when they want to explore something, or they experience shame and self-doubt if they are restricted or overprotected. Next, these preschool years largely encompass what Erikson called the initiative versus guilt stage, from around age 3 to 6. During this initiative versus guilt stage, children's view of themselves change. They have desire to act independently of their parents and do things on their own. And on the other hand, the guilt that comes from failure when they don't succeed. They're eager to do things on their own. Let me do it, as popular refrain among preschoolers, but they feel guilt if their efforts fail. They come to see themselves as persons in their own right, and they begin to make decisions on their own. Self-concept in the preschool years. Self-concept, a person's identity or set of beliefs about what one is like as an individual. Collectivistic orientation, a philosophy that promotes the notion of interdependence. Individualistic orientation, a philosophy that emphasizes personal identity and uniqueness of the individual. Many Asian societies tend to have a collectivistic orientation, promoting the notion of interdependence. People in such cultures tend to regard themselves as parts of a larger social network in which they are interconnected with and responsible to others. On the contrary, in Western cultures, they are more likely to develop a view of the self, reflecting an individualistic orientation that emphasizes personal identity and the uniqueness as an individual. They are more apt to see themselves as self-contained and autonomous in competition with others for scarce resources. Children in the Western cultures are more likely to focus on what sets them apart from others, what makes them special. Preschoolers' awareness of their ethnic or racial identity develops slowly and is subtly influenced by the attitudes of the people, schools, and other cultural institutions. Race dissonance is the phenomenon in which minority children indicate preferences for majority values or people. Gender identity. Sex typically refers to sexual autonomy, anatomy, and sexual behavior, whereas gender refers to the perception of maleness or femaleness related to the membership in a given society. By the age of 2, children consistently label themselves and those around them as male or female. Preschool-age children often have very strict ideas about how boys and girls are supposed to act. Beliefs in gender stereotypes become increasingly pronounced up to age 5, and although they become somewhat less rigid by age 7, they do not disappear. Hormones are one sex-related biological characteristic that have been found to affect gender-based behaviors. Some research suggests that biological differences exist in the structure of female and male brains. For instance, part of the corpus callosum, the bundle of nerves that connects the hemisphere of the brain, is proportionally larger in women than men. Psychoanalytic perspectives. To Freud, the preschool years encompass the phallic stage, in which the focus of a child's pleasure relates to genital sexuality. Identification. The process in which children attempt to be similar to their same-sex parent, incorporating the parent's attitudes and values. Social learning approaches. Social learning approaches see children as learning gender-related behavior and expectations by observing others. Children watch the behavior of their parents, teachers, siblings, and even peers. Books and media, in particular TV and video games, also play a role in perpetuating traditional views of gender-related behavior from which preschoolers may learn. TV also presents men and women in traditional gender roles. I think this is quite old because sometimes, like now, we already have new roles. Women have new roles. Women can be powerful, they can have high position at work. Cognitive approaches. Gender identity. The perception of oneself as male or female. Gender schema. A cognitive framework that organizes information relevant to gender. Cognitive approaches. In the view of some theories, one aspect of preschoolers' desire to form a clear sense of identity is the wish to establish a gender identity, a perception of themselves as male or female. To do this, they develop a gender schema, a cognitive framework that organizes information relevant to the gender. Gender schemas are developed early in life and serve as lens through which preschoolers view the world. Gender constancy. By the time they reach the age of 4 or 5, children develop an understanding of gender constancy, the awareness that people are permanently males or females depending on fixed, unchangeable biological factors. Androgynous, a state in which gender roles encompass characteristics thought typical of both sexes. 4 approaches to gender development: biological, psychoanalytic, social learning, and cognitive. The biological perspective, key concepts. Our ancestors who behaved in ways that are now stereotypically feminine or masculine may have been more successful in reproducing. Brain differences may lead to gender differences. Applying the concepts to preschool children. Girls may be genetically programmed by evolution to be more expressive and nurturing, while boys are programmed to be more competitive and forceful. Abnormal hormone exposure before birth has been linked to both boys and girls behaving in ways typically expected of the other gender. Psychoanalytic key concepts. Gender development is the result of identification with the same-sex parent achieved by moving through a series of stages related to biological urges. Girls and boys whose parents of the same sex behave in stereotypically masculine or feminine ways are likely to do so too, perhaps because they identify with those parents. Cognitive perspective. The key concepts. Through the use of gender schemas developed early in life, preschoolers form a lens through which they view the world. They use their increasing cognitive abilities to develop rules about what's appropriate for males and females. Preschoolers are more rigid in their rules about proper gender behavior than people at other ages, perhaps because they have just developed gender schemas that don't yet permit much variation from stereotypical expectations. As preschoolers age, their ideas about friendship gradually evolve. For 3-year-olds, the focus of friendships is the enjoyment of carrying out shared activities, doing things together, and playing jointly. There are few kinds of plays: functional play, constructive play, parallel play, onlooker play, associative play, and cooperative play. Okay, let's continue. Functional play involves doing something for the sake of being active rather than with the aim of creating some end product. It means kids just play just for the sake of playing and doing things. Constructive play. In constructive play, children manipulate objects to produce or build something. A child who builds a house out of Legos or puts a puzzle together is involved in constructive play. He or she has an ultimate goal to produce something. Parallel play. Action in which children play with similar toys in a similar manner but do not interact with each other. They just play together, like perhaps side by side, but they do not interact with each other. That's called parallel play. They play parallelly. Onlooker play. Children simply watch others at play, but do not actually participate themselves. Associative play. Play in which 2 or more children actually interact with one another by sharing or borrowing toys or materials, although they do not do the same thing. They just play and interact with one another, sharing or borrowing toys or materials, but they do not do the same thing. Cooperative play. Children generally play with one another, taking turns, playing games, or devising contests. Solitary and onlooker plays continue in the later stages of the preschool period. There are simply times when children prefer playing by themselves. When newcomers join a group, one strategy for becoming part of the group is to engage in onlooker play, waiting for an opportunity to join the play more actively. Play helps the brain develop. It's a good thing about playing. Preschoolers' theory of mind, understanding what others are thinking. One reason behind the changes in children's play is the continuing development of preschoolers' theory of mind. Theory of mind refers to knowledge and beliefs about how the mind operates. Using their theory of mind, preschool children are able to come up with explanations for how others think and reasons for why they behave the way they do. Three-year-old answers. Oh, okay. By the end of the preschool years, most children easily solve false belief problems. Certain children have considerable difficulties with false belief problems throughout their lifetimes. Children with autism spectrum disorder. Autism spectrum disorder is the psychological disorder that produces significant language and emotional difficulties. What factors are involved in the emergence of theory of mind? Certainly, brain maturation is an important factor. As myelination within the frontal lobes becomes more pronounced, preschoolers develop more emotional capacity involving self-awareness. In addition, hormonal changes seem to be related to emotions that are more evaluative in nature. Developing language skills are also related to the increasing sophistication of children's theory of mind. In particular, the ability to understand the meaning of words, such as think and know, is important in helping preschool-age children understand the mental lives of others. As much as the child's developing theory of mind promotes more engaged social interactions and play, the process is reciprocal. Opportunities for social interaction and make-believe play are also critical in promoting the development of theory of mind. For example, preschool-age children with other siblings have more sophisticated theories of mind than those without older siblings. Abused children show delays in their ability to correctly answer the false belief task, in part due to reduced experience with normal social interaction. Cultural factors also play an important role in the development of theory of mind and the interpretations that children bring to bear on others' actions. For example, children in more industrialized Western cultures may be more likely to see others' behavior as due to the kind of people they are, a function of the people's personal traits and characteristics. For example, she won the race because she is really fast. In contrast, children in non-Western cultures may see others' behavior as produced by forces that are less under their personal control. For example, she won the race because she was lucky. Parenting styles. Okay. Authoritarian, permissive, authoritative, and uninvolved parents. Authoritarian parents. They are controlling, punitive, rigid, and cold. The word is low. They value strict, unquestioning obedience from their children. They also do not tolerate expressions of disagreement. Permissive parents. Parents who provide feedback, oh, Parents who provide lax and inconsistent feedback and require little of their children. They don't see themselves as holding much responsibility for how their children turn out. They place little or no limits of or control on their children's behavior. Authoritative parents are firm, setting clear and consistent limits. Although they tend to be relatively strict, like authoritarian parents, they are loving and emotionally supportive. They also try to reason with their children, giving explanations for why they should behave in a particular way. Authoritative parents encourage their children to be independent. Uninvolved parents show virtually no interest in their children, displaying indifferent, rejecting behavior. They are detached emotionally and see their role as no more than feeding, clothing, and providing shelter for their child. In its most extreme form, uninvolved parenting results in a neglect, a form of child abuse. Particular style of discipline that parents use result in differences in children's behavior. For example, children of authoritarian parents tend to be withdrawn, showing relatively little sociability. They are not very friendly, often behaving uneasily around their peers. Girls who are raised by authoritarian parents are especially dependent on their parents, whereas boys are unusually hostile. Permissive parents have children who share their undesirable characteristics of children of authoritarian parents. They tend to be dependent and moody, and they are low in social skills and self-control. Children of authoritative parents fare best. They are generally independent, friendly with their peers, self-assertive, and cooperative. They have strong motivation to achieve, and they are typically successful and likable. They regulate their own behavior effectively, both in terms of their relationships with others and emotional self-regulation. Some authoritative parents also display several characteristics that have come to be called supportive parenting, including parental warmth, proactive teaching, calm discussion during disciplinary episodes, and interest and involvement in children's activities. Children whose parents engage in such supportive parenting show better judgment and are better protected from the consequences of later adversity they may encounter. Children whose parents show uninvolved parenting styles are the worst off. Their parents' lack of involvement disrupts their emotional development considerably, leading them to feel unloved and emotionally detached. And their physical and cognitive development is adversely affected as well. Sometimes parents switch from their dominant mode to one of the others. Cultural differences in child-rearing practices. The child-rearing practices that parents are urged to follow reflect cultural perspectives about the nature of children, as well as about the appropriate role of parents and their support system. Child-rearing practices are not the sole influence on children's development. Sibling and peer influences play a significant role in children's development. Furthermore, children's behavior is in part produced by their unique genetic endowments, and their behavior can in turn shape parental behavior. In summary, parents' child rearing practices are just one of a rich array of environmental and genetic influences that affect children. Psychological maltreatment. Psychological maltreatment occurs when parents or other caregivers harm children's behavioral, cognitive, emotional, or physical functioning. It may be the result of either overt behavior or neglect. Psychological maltreatment has been associated with low self-esteem, lying, misbehavior, and underachievement in school. One reason that psychological maltreatment produces so many negative consequences is that the brains of victims undergo permanent changes due to the abuse. For example, childhood maltreatment can lead to reductions in the size of amygdala and hippocampus in adulthood. The stress, fear, and terror produced by abuse may also produce permanent changes in the brain due to overstimulation of the limbic system. Because the limbic system is involved in the regulation of memory and emotion, the result can be antisocial behavior during adulthood. Resilience, the ability to overcome circumstances that place a child at high risk for psychological or physical damage. Let's move on. Moral development. The changes in people's sense of justice and of what is right and wrong, and in their behavior related to moral issues. Child psychologist Jean Piaget suggested that moral development, like cognitive development, proceeds in stages. The earliest stage is the broad form of moral thinking called heteronomous morality. Heteronomous morality, in which rules are seen as invariant and unchangeable. During this stage, which lasts from about age 4 through 7, children play games rigidly, assuming that there is one and only one way to play, and that every other way is wrong. At the same time, they may not even fully grasp the game rules. A group of children may be playing together, with each child playing according to a slightly different set of rules. Nevertheless, they enjoy playing with others. Every child may win such a game because winning is equated with having a good time, as opposed to truly competing with others. The rigid heteronomous morality is ultimately replaced by two later stages of morality: incipient cooperation and autonomous cooperation. Incipient cooperation and autonomous cooperation. In the incipient cooperation stage, which lasts from around age 7 to 10, children's games become more clearly social. They learn the actual formal rules of games, and they play according to this shared knowledge. Rules are still seen as largely unchangeable. There is a right way to play the game, and children in the incipient cooperation stage play according to these formal rules. It is not until the autonomous cooperation stage, which begins at about age 10, that children become fully aware that formal game rules can be modified if the people who play them agree. The later transition into more sophisticated forms of moral development. Until these later stages are reached, children's reasoning about rules and issues of justice is bounded in the concrete. Children in the heteronomous stage of moral development also believe in immanent justice. Immanent justice is the notion that rules that are broken earn immediate punishment. They believe that if they do something wrong, they will be punished instantly, even if no one sees them carrying out their misdeeds. In contrast, older children understand that punishments for misdeeds are determined and meted out by people. Children who have moved beyond the heteronomous morality stage have come to understand that one must make judgments about the severity of a transgression based on whether the person intended to do something wrong. What is the critics of Piaget's approach to moral development? His approach suffers from the same problem we encountered in his theory of cognitive development. He underestimated the age at which children's moral skills are honed. Social learning approaches to morality. Social learning approaches focus more on how the environment in which preschoolers operate produces pro-social behavior. What is pro-social behavior? It is helping behavior that benefits others. Helping behavior that benefits others. Social learning approaches build upon the behavioral approaches. For example, they acknowledge that some instances of children's pro-social behavior stem from situations in which they have received positive reinforcement for acting in a morally appropriate way. According to social learning approaches, children also learn moral behavior more indirectly by observing the behavior of others, called models. Children imitate models who receive reinforcement for their behavior, and ultimately they learn to perform the behavior themselves. Abstract modeling. The process in which modeling paves the way for the development of more general rules and principles. Rather than always modeling the particular behavior of others, older preschoolers begin to develop generalized principles that underlie the behavior they observe. After observing repeated instances in which a model is rewarded for acting in a morally desirable way, children begin the process of inferring and learning the general principles of moral conduct. Genetic approaches to morality. Empathy. The understanding of what another individual feels. The roots of empathy actually grow early. For example, 1-year-old infants cry when they hear other infants crying. By ages 2 and 3, toddlers will over gifts and spontaneously share toys with other children and adults, even if they are strangers. Aggression. Intentional injury or harm to another person. Emotional self regulation, the capability to adjust emotions to a desired state and level of intensity. Instrumental aggression, aggression motivated by the desire to obtain a concrete goal, such as playing with a desirable toy that another child is playing with. Relational aggression, non physical aggression that is intended to hurt another person's feelings. For example, such aggression may be demonstrated through name calling, withholding friendship, or simply saying mean, hurtful things that make the recipient feel bad. The roots of aggression. Some theoreticians believe that people behave aggressively is an instinct, part and parcel of the human condition. For instance, Freud's psychoanalytic theory suggests that we all are motivated by sexual and aggressive instincts. Konrad Lorenz share fighting humans and animals share a fighting instinct that stems from primitive urges to preserve territory, maintain a steady supply of food, and weed out weaker animals. Social learning approaches suggest that reinforcement also comes in less direct way. Preschool children modeled the behavior of the adult. Those who had seen the aggressive model playing with the Bobo doll were considerably more aggressive than those who had watched the calm, unaggressive model playing with the Tinker toys. We're done! Thank you so much for learning psychology with me.